A very good evening to all of you. I'm Shubha, and on behalf of Delhi Storytellers Tribe, I welcome you all to the second episode of the series Being a Storyteller. This is a series that Delhi Storytellers Tribe ideated in order to trigger conversations about being a responsible storyteller, the various aspects that surround that, about making storytelling as a sustainable profession. We kickstarted the series early this year, wherein we discussed about building communities. It was hosted by Archana Chandel, and we had Geeta Ramanujam ma'am and Vikram Sridhar, both of whom need no special introduction as our guests. You can go ahead and watch this episode of ours on our Facebook and YouTube page. Now, today we are back with yet another interesting thread of discussion, which is theatre and storytelling. We have with us two inspiring guests from the theatre world who are also storytellers. So, without further ado, let me invite our two guests for today, Garima, Arya, and Akshay Gandhi.
Hello,
A
everyone.
very warm welcome to both of you.
Thank
So
you.
glad to have you here.
Thank you so much.
While most of us here already know who these two people are, I would still like to give you a little sneak peek into their story. So, Garima is a professional puppeteer, she is a theatre coach, and she's also very passionate about acting. She is a director of Drama Buzz Company, which is into training children and adults in puppetry, storytelling, and theatre. Super glad to have you here, Garima.
Thank you so much. So am I, and I'm so happy to see so many of them here. So yeah, this is going to be fun.
And Akshay. Akshay is the founding artistic director at Still Space Theatre, which is an artist centric ensemble that is focused on creating theatre and research and applied training. Now, he's a voice coach, a theatre artist, and a very passionate storyteller as well. He has been working on resuscitating the unique and traditional art form of storytelling called as Kavad Katha. We're super delighted to have you with us today, Akshay.
This is voice training, and my voice is gone today.
So now that we have had a little peek into their story, how about listening to their story from them, listening to the complete story from them? So are you ready, Garima and Akshay? Because I have a whole lot of questions planned for you.
Bring it on.
You're saying theater, break a leg.
Yeah.
Break a leg. That's right. So, honestly speaking, right up until this moment, I'm trying to get my head around a certain question. Okay, I'm trying to figure out if storytelling and theater are the same or are they different? And if they're different, then where do they intersect? Where is the common ground? What do you have to say about it?
Um, Basically, we all are telling stories, whether it's through theater or it's through puppetry or through a play or various other ways. Even if it's a choreography it's a dance choreography which is telling a story, if it's a song which is telling a story, if it's an instrumental music which is telling a story. So everybody is basically telling stories. So in what I feel is that storytelling is the bigger umbrella. And underneath that, we have so many other ways to tell the story. So I'd give my entire credit to storytelling as the big boss, and everybody else are the employees, if you ask me.
Drum roll. What is your take on it, Akshay?
I personally think, everything can be considered one. Not just storytelling theater, but say dance, theater, music. Ultimately, all of them are forms of expression. I think the distinction is needed just for the artist as well as for the audience, so that we are clear in our mind what are we doing. That distinction is primarily for, I think, craft and creative purposes.
Mhm.
So when I say I'm a dancer, then my priorities changes about my body, about my whatever. right? When I say I'm a storyteller, my priorities change. Ultimately, they're all same, but it's just about what becomes more important and what becomes less important. And the kind of inventions which has happened. I mean, yes, I agree with Garima that everything is storytelling, right? And the kind of inventions which has happened in these two fields are very different, right? And especially in theater, I can speak more of theater because for me, theater comes first. Storytelling is a very newly found passion for me. So theater has gone through tremendous amount of inventions and experimentation over time, and the way it connects with people today is beyond what I would say beyond narrative. I mean, we can talk about story and narrative, but nowadays theater does not necessarily need a narrative to hold a performance together. And that is the kind of experimentation which theater people have done, and the kind of thing happened. Similarly, storytelling has gone through its own invention and journey. So, just because of these reasons, one can consider them separately. But yeah, they're all same. I would say they are all just forms of expression. And yeah,
Right. So we still have that a bit of a shadow area over there.
So I would actually agree with Akshay on that, saying the skill set actually is a little bit different. The skill set also varies according to your audience, your target audience, and even if you just talk about storytelling, even in that the skill set keeps changing according to your change of audience. So when you're performing for toddlers, it's a very different skill set you need. When you're performing for adults as an audience, it's a very
Right.
different skill set you need. And I think in storytelling, this is how we sort of juggle with our skills. And I think in theater, because I've been into theater myself, I know what you mean, Akshay, by saying that it's not always about a story. It could be a scene sometimes. It could be just a question that theater is asking. It might not have a story at all, but that question might open up different personal stories in people's lives, which
so
is quite
true.
interesting as well. So I feel that sooner or later we connect to a story. So when I see a presentation, when I even see a theater piece or a choreography which might not have a story, but it makes me relate to some part of my story, my personal story, that is why I'm still sitting in that theater till the end of the show. So which means
Yeah.
I'm relating to something. So I feel the stories kahin na kahin se mil jayengi, whether
Beautiful.
it's
I think,
my personal
yeah.
story or the director or the writer showing us a story or not showing us a story, but I will eventually reach a story or make a story in my head, even with that little stimulus that I'm given as an audience. So that is what I meant by coming back to stories
Just
in
to
one
add
word.
to that, I totally agree. And just to add to that idea, for me personally, just for my own distinctions, okay, when I'm saying, okay, this is a piece of theater and this is a piece of storytelling, how do I personally distinguish? Is that in storytelling, I have the liberty to tell the story. In theater, you don't tell the story. Audience has to perceive the story, or audience has to imagine the story.
Right.
That, sometimes you might say a little bit here and there where you are telling a story, but most of the time you're saying something else, you're doing something else, you are communicating, you're relating, you're associating in a very different way, so that as audience I can perceive story. And that, I think, for me is a huge difference between a storytelling form and a theater form.
Right. I think that kind of gives me a little bit of clarity. Maybe I need to ponder more on this to kind of get my head around that. So now, Akshay, you said you were just mentioning that for you, theater comes first, right? So would you tell us what's the story behind your journey into theater, or how did you get into theater?
So I mean, my background is scientist. I mean, I was interested in science and quantum mechanics and computation and all of that. That still remains one of my favorite subjects. But I watched a piece of theater many years ago, and it inspired me because, as I said, it allows you to imagine more than it does not feed you, it does not tell you anything, but it allows you to imagine. And I was wondering how that happened. Because when you see a film, you receive whatever is given to you, but in theater, 90% of things are not on stage, and yet you kind of imagine. And that was very fascinating. And since then, I'm like, okay, I have to explore this. And that is what I think I'm also chasing. I have made so many productions which are about imagination and reality. I sometimes just constantly go back to the subject of what is real and what is imaginary, and how real the imaginary is. So for me, that is what holds me as a theater artist, and yeah, keep finding interesting things.
I think that's a very interesting line there, how real the imaginary is. I mean, that kind of opens up a lot of possibilities and kind of gets you thinking, right?
Yeah. Oh, so sorry, just to also add a bit, I realized that you asked a question about the journey, and I just gave you a summary. When I just trained, I did as many plays as I can in Bangalore, worked with every kind of production house or group, just to get an understand of what it is. And then try to take as much training as possible, as many plays as possible. Started creating my own work, and since then I'm still sort of finding. And took some core training, which holds me as artist, and then now I make my own work. And sometimes, if it is exciting, I also act in some of those shows. Yeah, so far.
Nice. So, Garima, I did happen to hear your story about how you ventured into theater, but I would like you to, probably tell us that story because I'm sure the audience would also like to know about that.
So my journey started when I was in school. So this was grade 9. Until then, everybody around me, all my friends had understood what they are good at. Somebody was good at music, somebody was good at dance, somebody was good at something or the other. I had no clue. So I was still waiting to discover myself that what is it that I am good at. So in grade 9, I was very fortunate with Mr. Barry John had come to my school
Ah,
and he took a workshop there. And that is when I found out that this is it. This is what I'm good at and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. In grade 9, I did not exactly know what was it that I was going to do, but I knew what Mr. Barry John is doing, I have to do that. I did not know what exactly he was doing, but I just wanted to do that. And that is when I started doing plays, a lot of plays. After that, it was like jail se choot ke koi bahar nikla. And suddenly, itna sara plays kar liya. It was just crazy. And then I stopped studying at all and I was just doing plays. And then after that, I did my graduation in psychology honors. And just after that, as soon as that finished, I ran back to Barry sir and I said, sir, I want to do what you do. So can you please tell me what to do? So he said, there is this education in the theater in education course. Please do that. Did that for 4 months. And then I was like, okay, I need to explore more. Then I went to Sri Ram Center of Performing Arts, did acting diploma from there. And while that was happening, Gully Gully Sim Sim happened to me, which was puppetry, which was accidental completely. I was in Sri Ram Center when I saw this poster saying voiceover artists needed. It's like, हाँ ये try कर सकते हैं. वहाँ गए तो पता चला कुछ और ही चल रहा था. So there was this man, Martin P. Robinson, from America, and he was standing there with his hand like that and going, "Ma Chali Jalki Rani hai," and I'm like, I thought I was here for a voiceover audition. What's going on? And so they had a wonderful process where they were auditioning. We were some 1,200, 1,300 people, and they were auditioning us each day, teaching us one technique of puppetry. And the ones who could, sort of get that would stay. The others were asked to leave. So by the end of 15 days, we were like 12 of us left, but we knew the basics of puppetry by then. And on the last day, they introduced the puppet to us. And then they said, this is what you need to do. This is a TV show and welcome aboard. And we were like, all right. So that's when it actually struck us that we've become puppeteers. And straight, then 6 months of training and then straight on a TV show. So we were suddenly professional puppeteers. We had no idea that this, by we, I mean none of us who got selected had an idea that we were making a career in puppetry by then. So it was accidental, it was coincidental. And so that is how puppetry happened to me. And storytelling came very naturally when I started working with children. And with children, I thought that the best language that they understand is stories, through stories. So then I wanted to speak their language. And that is when I wanted to enter their world, because I found my calling as a theater coach. So that's my calling. And I thought with little ones especially, I thought very easy. It was quite easy to get to them through stories. And so that's why storytelling just happened. And the experience of puppetry and the experience of theater came in handy. And so it became performative storytelling for me. So I would mostly not sit at one place and tell a story because I'm kinesthetic and I have to move around. So that's when I thought that let's perform the story like an actor does, and use puppets wherever if the story demands it. So so then that all of it just came together, thankfully, and I'm grateful that all these surprises happened in my life. So yeah.
That's really interesting. In fact, that kind of triggers a question in my head, but I will ask that a little later. So you said that suddenly found out that you are now a professional puppeteer, right? Now, most of people use puppetry as a very loose term. I mean, you do puppetry, and then you also use puppetry in storytelling, right? So how is it different? I mean, is puppetry in itself different from using puppetry in storytelling? Is that different?
Yeah, so puppetry, first of all, is a very, very technical skill that you need. Um, so just, for example, if this is a stick puppet, just moving the puppet is not puppetry, right? Like any which way. It has syllables. It has a way to move it. You have to give it a voice. You have to give it body language. You even if it doesn't have facial expressions, so that means that my voice needs to have all those expressions so that it looks real. So I feel puppetry, first of all, is extremely difficult as a skill, depending on what puppets they are, but of course can be learned. It's not rocket science either. Everybody can do puppetry. It's not a big deal too. But yes, it has rules. It's like playing a guitar. You see, you need to know the chords. So with puppetry, it's like that. Theater also is technical, but I still say there is scope of improvisation. It's subjective. You can play around with it, but with puppetry, you have to do certain things right, and then you play around with it. So basics have to be clear. So now to answer your question, puppetry in itself, for me, there are two things. If it's pure puppetry, then either it's a live puppet show, or it's a recorded puppet show, or it is a TV or a film that you're using puppets in. So that is video puppetry, right? So either it's live shows or it's video puppetry, or now it's also online shows. So everything is online shows now. So we've discovered that very recently. So that is purely puppetry in the purest form. Now, sometimes with a puppet, you'll also see a puppeteer. For example, I'll just give you a little demonstration. So here you'll see the puppet also, and you'll see the puppeteer also, and they'll interact with each other. So, oh, hello everybody. I'm so happy to see you. Mwah. Oh, hi Gamu. Where were you all this time? I was waiting for my turn. So here you see the puppet, and you also see the puppeteer. Sometimes you'll only see the puppet and the puppeteer is going to go out of frame. Then when you only see the puppet, that is pure puppetry. But when an actor has come in, now you're playing around with it, right? So now even that can be called puppetry, but maybe it's not called a pure puppet show. Now we'll have different names for it, right? It could be a dialogue, an interview. A puppet is hosting a show, can be an anchor. Now, if I use the puppet in storytelling, then again you can't call that as a puppet show. Then you'll call it storytelling with puppets.
Storytelling with puppets, right.
And honestly, these terms we all have just created. There is no book anywhere which says that this is what it should be called when another actor is around. This is what it should be called when 5 actors are around and 1 puppet. Kuch nahi hai ye sab. It's we call it contemporary puppetry when we have, say, live dancers along with huge puppets, and we can call it contemporary. We can call it modern puppetry. We can call it fusion, whatever you guys want. Label it, because there's no book which says that it should be this way, right? The book is about types of puppets for sure.
Right.
So I usually, when I use puppets while telling a story, I would say that This is storytelling with puppets.
It's more like a prop that you use.
Wouldn't want to say prop
Prop,
because
okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. That's all right. Because prop in a theater language is very different. If my puppet is holding something in its hand, then that is a prop that the puppet is holding. So, for example, if a puppet is holding a bottle, the bottle is the prop, not the puppet, right? So, puppet is actually somebody who we are trying to bring alive. We would so it's alive the moment my hand goes into the puppet. So I will not want to call it a prop anymore because that is it's an object.
Yeah, I got that. Yes. So it's like the puppet also has an agency in the story. I mean,
absolutely,
an equal character. All right.
Absolutely. And I'd like to stay corrected there. Otherwise, my friend Choiti Ghosh will kill me. Sorry, props and objects are not same either. I learned that very recently because I recently did object theater workshop with her and she was like, they're not the same either. She was a better person to talk about that difference. But yeah, I correct myself there.
Right. That was quite interesting to know. Yeah. I mean, I really didn't think there was so much of a difference between, using it in the story and puppet show as such. It had different connotations altogether. All right. So, Akshay, I started off saying that you got into storytelling through covered katha. That's how you got into storytelling, right? So, how did that happen? And if you could just tell us about something more about covered katha and
so as I'm always interested in making new theater, whatever kind, and I visited my village, which is in Rajasthan, and people were asking, "What do you do?" And I said, "I do theater." Nobody in my village know what is theater. So I said, "I tell stories." And so one of the old persons said, "Oh, you're like Kavadiyas." I'm like, "What is Kavadiyas?" And they said, "Oh, they used to come 40 years ago, 50 years ago. They used to come to the village and they will open this box and they will tell stories." I'm like, "Wow, what is that? That sounds interesting." And obviously, the first thing you do is Google. So you Google, and then I found Nina Sabnani ma'am. She is an IIT Bombay professor. She's done an amazing amount of research and documentation on Kavad Katha. And so I went through all that material, and every time I'm going through that, I'm more and more excited. So I took someone's bike, I traveled, tried to find where these Kavadiyas are because nobody know where they are. They don't necessarily live the same life. So in the village they live, people don't know that they are Kavadiyas. They never perform in the same village. They travel with their family and then perform in another village. So the people in village don't know that they are Kavadiyas. So that became difficult. I found them. My first intention was to tell, "Hey, can we do? Can I host you guys? Can we do something in Bangalore?" And they're like, "No, no, 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 we don't want to perform and all. This is a ritual for us. This is a tradition, and we do it as genealogy." And for this is something which is very interesting that for a lot of folk artists, art is not just art. For them, it is life. It is sacred. It is religious. It is ritualistic, and they don't. I mean, which gives them amazing kind of presence, which gives them really really deep rooting, which many of us contemporary artists don't have. And they like to stay there. So after a lot of discussion, he told me about a lot of things about. His name is Koja Ramji, and he told me a lot about Kavod. I was intrigued. I came back knowing that he's not going to perform. I said, "Okay, what else can I do?" I said, "I am a theater artist, right? I can make a theater piece about this entire thing." And so I started basically thinking of making a theater piece. And in that, I started writing every morning. And what would come out of it were stories in a very specific format. I folded paper in four parts, like how they do it in Rajasthan. And I started writing. I gave myself rules, like how Garima said that there are specific rules. And what make any form of art intriguing is these rules and how artist is free to play with those rules. More and more grasp we have as artists on the tools or on the rules, then we are more free. So I started creating a lot of my own conditions and started writing material. I created a piece and then I went to Koja Ramji and said, "This is what I created. What do you think?" He said, "This is your way of telling cover." I said, "Okay." So I came back. I did a small work in progress with some carton box and all. And I asked if there is a visual artist who's interested in collaborating. And so three visual artists came forward. One is Rohit Bhasi, who continues to be my collaborator even now. and Manju Mohan Das, she is a contemporary postmodern artist, and Srilata was just getting into visual art. So then we imagined a very big theatrical piece. So this 4 feet by 2 feet panel on rollers and life-size paintings, and I moved those rollers, and there are these 16 paintings on stage, and I'm performing like an actor, like a performer, but telling a story, but telling 12, 16 different stories which I wrote, interweaved into each other, roughly inspired by Katha Sarita Sagar, and that was a 1 hour 15-minute show, from 1 hour 20-minute show, and then we did a couple of shows at Jagrati, Rangashankara, a couple of other places in Bangalore, Attagalata, and all Lahila, no, not Lahila. And then we realized, oh, it is so difficult to travel with these big panels. It is so difficult. They are heavy and they're paintings, so you can't even just sort of travel with them. And so then we waited for organizers who would invite us. And each time an organizer invites us, they say, oh, we can't take care of the expense of those big panels. I said, okay, no problem. And during the same time, I went to New York for my year-long training. And I was constantly thinking about this tradition. And I said, what do these people do as tradition? I became more interested in the tradition than the performance of the tradition. And that is when I realized that, oh, they just sit and tell. They just sit and just speak the story. And that's, as an actor, that's a challenging thing to do.
Challenge, yeah.
To hold
I'm
an
sure.
entire piece, 1 hour piece, just sitting, not moving around at all. And I said, I will take it up as challenge. One, to also understand tradition, what does it feel like to be in the tradition, and also push myself as actor. And so I called Rohit from the and said, Rohit, can you figure out a small cardboard and we'll do something. I will send you how to design it, where to. And Rohit is amazing. He's just amazing person. He's always excited about any adventures. So then he created, I took it back to New York. I created a piece there because my teachers were there. I showed it to them. Some dramaturgical logic has to be figured out and all of that. And then that piece was set. So for me, even then, that was a piece of performance. I never called it a storytelling performance. For me, it is still a one of the project. When I came back, a lot of people started inviting, and I started going to these literature festivals, these storytelling festivals, and like, what is this? That is when I was introduced to this field called storytelling. I had no clue that an entire circle called storytelling exists because very recently, like 2 years, 3 years before, when some storyteller will come to the show and they say, "Oh, this has to come to our storytelling." Amin was here. Amin saw a show. Amin said, "You have to come with me to Bombay." I said, "Okay," and I usually not say no. I'm like, "Okay, sure, why not?" So people will just call, and then I started understanding that there is a world called storytelling. So the same research sort of continued. And then I started writing more stories in what might be called storytelling.
Okay.
Wrote a couple of shows in covered. One is Maya, which is what we extensively traveled. Then we did one commissioned project for Indian Music Experience, which was looking at musical life of Ravi Shankar. I said, I'm not interested in anyone's biography. I'm interested in people's philosophies. So I studied Ravi Shankar's journey as music person. And then I said, okay, these are the philosophies he's interested in, and wrote my own fictional version. So far, I never tell story which exists in a form or format. Sometimes
Okay.
I feel I don't know, I don't relate with them as of now. Because one, I'm
Right.
not
Right.
also like a full-time storyteller. I understand
Ah,
now that as a person who is functioning as a full-time storyteller, you research, you constantly read. I rarely. I just do storytelling for my son at night. That's my best shot. That's it.
that, that's that's a story in itself, actually. That entire journey, I must say. Now, since now that I mean, it's really interesting to see how both of you have kind of seamlessly merged theater and storytelling, and how that whole thing has been going forward. So, can you kind of suggest as to how a storyteller can incorporate the theatrical aspects into their craft of storytelling? I mean, how has that seamless movement happened for you? What tips would you give? You can go one after the other. Garima, why don't you go first?
Okay, I'll give some rest to his throat as he's coughing. I think I'll cover up for you here. So, so, so basically, what I personally did, I mean, of course, everyone does it differently. As we said, that we have rules, but we play around with them. So there is no such one way to do it, but I'll share with you how I did it. So, so for example, there's this story Ikkiduki that I perform. So in that, so that's a story which is written in a book, right? So it's a written form. It's a folk tale. It's a Rajasthani folk tale. So what I did with that story was that I played all the different characters in the story. So one time I was Icky, and the other time I was Duki, her sister. One time I played a mehendi plant, and another time I played a cow. Another time I played an old woman. So I literally played those roles instead of telling about those roles. So that is one thing. Secondly, so when I say I played those roles, which would mean I changed my voices for each role. I tried to play the body language of each character. I tried to also use one or two prop or one mask here and there. So like for the cow, I used a mask, but I did not change my costume. So my costume was neutral all through. So I was just adding accessories on top of me. So like in one, for a mehendi plant, I would just sometimes hold two branches in my hand, or sometimes don't even do that, just mime it. And then for a cow, use a mask. For an old lady, old woman, I would just take a dupatta and put it around my head and just pretend to be holding a stick, not even use a real stick. Leave some to imagination, as Akshay says, that if you have to leave some parts to the audience to just imagine, instead of giving them everything on the platter all the time. And then, so when I played Icky, I had a different body language. When I played Duki, I had a different body language. So that is one. The other part of how to include performance theater into my storytelling was creating locations. So well, before COVID days, I always used to be very demanding कि मुझे कम से कम 10 by 10 का space तो चाहिए क्योंकि मुझे locations करना है. And then COVID happened, and then this is the frame I got stuck in, and I'm like, all right then. And that's when I realized I've been pretty demanding all this while. And then we shrinked our performances in this frame, and it worked. And I was quite surprised that it kind of worked in this little frame that we had. So I would then just put my laptop as away from me as possible, and then also try to have that little space. So for example, there's one point where Duki runs. So when I used to run on the stage, which was so big in a live performance, I would cover the stage running. Here, I thought, okay, this is the frame. Why don't I run on spot and create the illusion that I'm still running? So earlier, when somebody told me to do Ikiduki online, I was like, that's not a possibility. But later, I was like, 1 second, what are we creative people for? Let's try and work this out. And it actually worked out. In that little frame, I could, on the spot itself. So earlier on a live stage, I would create a pond on the right hand side corner of the stage, for example. Not by create, I don't mean that I put anything there. I would just go to that corner and just do that, for example, mime it.
Right.
I didn't even have sound effects at the back for that. So just that, and then they know that, okay, she's got water. There's some kind of water body there, and then you say it. वहाँ पे एक छोटा सा तालाब था. Then we run to the talab and do something there. So and then और दूसरी तरफ उसे एक झोपड़ी दिखाई दी. Then I would run from this side of the stage to the other side of the stage, and then as if I'm knocking on the door. There is no झोपड़ी there. There is no set there.
Right.
There is no hut. But I'm trying to make the audience imagine it by knocking on it and then waiting for somebody to come out. And then I would go behind the wings, wear my dupatta, come out from there, and now I'm a different character. Right? So on the stage, तो ये सब कर रहे हैं, different locations. Center में मैंने जंगल बनाया था. Right hand side corner was the pond. Left hand side corner was the hut, and I was running from one place to another. In an online situation, how I tweaked it was everything is on this spot itself. I turn around and I reach another location. I swirl around and I reach another location. So, and that worked too, because everybody was convinced, because I was convinced as a performer. So, so we were able to sort of create that as well. So yeah, that is the way I do it. One is locations, the other would be, say, props. accessories, costumes, then the characterizations and body language, different types of voices, taking up those characters, standing up and performing kinesthetically. So that is how I would bring theater in, if that
Right.
answers your question. Yeah.
Right. Yes, yes. I mean, that's definitely gives us a lot of insight into how it goes. And in fact, I think simple, small actions can make a lot of difference in terms of creating that imagination in your audience's mind, right? Like you said, you spray water, and even if you don't say tala, but if you do that, then people can actually imagine that it's water that you're spraying onto you, and so that's a very interesting thing to do. And in fact, what I also feel is in storytelling, while in theater it is one person playing one role, when you incorporate that into storytelling, I think one person who's telling the story is playing multiple roles here, right? I think that's a very interesting take on theater in
Yes,
storytelling.
that opportunity is there in storytelling. So you're narrating. So once you're a narrator and then you're playing different roles and then you come back to becoming a narrator. So you're switching in over characters so
Right.
quickly, which is very interesting. I thought in storytelling. In theater also sometimes we play double roles, triple roles, or whatever. We go off stage, change our costume, come back, we're a different character. We do that in theater as well. But here I feel in storytelling, there is no time really because there are no
To actually
blackouts.
go, yeah, you can't just go out and come in again. You just have to be there, and
Exactly,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you lose your audience that way. So because the concept, the format is different.
True.
The audience is so sitting mostly very close to you also in a storytelling. I don't know, after
Right.
COVID, we'll have to sit 6 feet apart from each other, but usually they're around, while you're telling a story.
And
So
as you
yeah.
said, the turning part of it, I think even in the dance form of storytelling, they change characters by turning, and
Yes.
that's how they portray that a character has changed.
Yes, yes. Like a lot of people use a lot of music. Kapil does that. In my show, there's Mr. Kamal. He also does, plays music. So sometimes music is the transition to the next thing.
Hmm.
So that also works well. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Thank you. I mean, that's a wonderful way of looking at it, and how easily that we could transition, or rather not transition, I would say rather amalgamate the two together and create a completely new experience.
That's right.
All right, so I think now it's about time that I address the elephant in the room. So why most of us here are artists, are storytellers, who we are all into one or the other kind of art form, and at some point of other or the other, we have realized that, or maybe we have felt that it's getting increasingly difficult to sustain this as a profession. Right? Have you both had a moment like that where you felt that sustaining storytelling as a profession is challenging? And if you have, what do you think? What should we do, or what should a storyteller do to have it as a sustainable profession? Akshay, you can take this question this time. We'll give Garima some rest.
This is very difficult. Very, very difficult. There is no one way. It is not organized as other industries, right? And which means that there are, mm, uh, like how other industries function. There is a kind of demand, and then you sort of offer them with something. One, because this field is creative field. It is not like you're creating plastic bottles and you just need to create more plastic bottles, right? It's not about that. At the same time, you need an ecosystem which can make use of you. So, right, so many times, obviously, gone through phases which are like, financial crisis, what should we do now? And each time you sort of figure out a new way, or something happens and you just find something interesting, and just that month at least is gone. Um, saying that what has worked for me so far is creating your own opportunities, to be honest, which I think is always a first generation problem, or first, second generation, those who sort of, when the industries kind of begin to formalize, which I feel now a lot of storytelling at least seems to be formalized. Theater is still far from any kind of formalization. But storytelling, whatever I have seen, little bit of it, it is getting into some sort of formal structure. Before that happens, which means before people invite you to say, "Hey, we need this," and your calendar is like booked, like, okay, this is so. One quote which I really like, which I want to say, that amateurs are those who wait for inspiration, Professionals just get up and do their work, right? And that's professional artists. You just get up and do your work, and that's important. You can't say, "Oh, jab mood hoga tab kuch sochenge," and that's good because if we have an industry where there's that your calendar is booked, you are going and performing. Yes, some nights you are weak, some nights you are out of inspiration, you are dry, you take your breaks and you come back. But that is where I think we should reach. Till then, till then, we need to create our own opportunities. Create a show which you think can travel. Create a kind of module which you think can be received by other people. I know I've never done it so far. I've never sort of touched the corporate world, but I know that you create material which then can be delivered to corporate world or to schools or to organizations. I've worked with disabled children. I've worked with medical professionals or frontline workers during COVID time. And that's an opportunity. It pays a little bit, but that's okay. That you create a module specifically for a specific kind of audience and deliver it to them. So then it becomes more of a self-created project, self-created modules, be it in teaching, be it in delivering, be it in performing, be it in sharing material, whatever you have, and keep expanding the way what you can do without losing that you also need to go deep, because I think the value of the work only comes when you're really deeply connected to what you're doing, at least some of your work. Maybe not all your work is really dense, but at least some of it, and then hope things will work out.
I guess being consistent is the key.
Yes, being consistent, constantly looking for what I can do, because there are so many things which storytellers can do. We're just sort of, sometimes we need somebody else to say, "Hey, let's do it," and sometimes
Right.
it can be just self-discipline. Say, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do because I need to overcome my financial situation," right? And then you sort of do it, or you leave the field, which is sad.
Garima, what is your take on this?
Yeah, so again, I feel that everybody must have had different experiences when it comes to opportunities. But I do agree with Akshay that here uh, it's not like a corporate world where you have qualifications, you crack an interview, which these days is also very difficult. I'm not demeaning that at all. But then at least you know that you'll get somewhere with the qualification that you've done. In our field, in any art form, it's very different. It's there is no standardized process कि भाई इतना qualify कर लिया तो मिल ही जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं है. But I think the important thing is, like he said, that you got to follow your passion and be consistent with it. We have to hone our skills as much as possible, and we cannot now anymore take it lightly. When I started about 22 years ago, there was no theater that time in at least the place that I was in, Noida. It was completely dead. There was no theater. Storytelling का किसी ने नाम नहीं सुना था. So that I say is, I mean, even though storytelling is an extremely old tradition in India, but even then it's pretty recent when it started, when people started paying for it.
Paying for
When
it, yeah.
people started earning out of it is very new. So I have seen that difference from being nowhere to so many storytelling clubs now, so many storytelling societies, Delhi Storyteller Tribe being one of them. There's Delhi Storytelling Network. There's so much in Bangalore. There's Kathalya. There's certified courses in storytelling now, which were never there before. So now it is becoming a field with where you could have qualifications, where you could have certifications, where even though it does not matter in the field, finally what matters is how good are you at your craft. And then word of mouth is what is the best marketing. If you've done an extremely good show, then that is recommended to another 10 people, and that's when you start getting calls, and that's how your calendar starts getting filled up.
Absolutely.
So that's the way here. So like Akshay said, that it's extremely important to do extremely good work, and that's it. That's the only key. If we are extremely good, there are so many opportunities out there for us. And secondly, I think slowly there is a bit of a revolution happening where a lot of artists have stopped doing work for free. a lot of us have started saying no to work that is for free. So that I think is a very beautiful revolution that is starting, because if we all stand together in that, then only, I mean, it's like you, if you value yourself, that's the only way others are going to value you, right? It's as simple as that. And I learned it really late because for the love of it and for the passion of it, we keep doing it. And for me, so I usually perform for children as audience. So when I would see the faces of kids and their smiles, I would even forget to ask for money. I would forget to take my check. I would forget to, because it's so fulfilling. That entire experience is so fulfilling. But slowly, once one realizes that it's getting into, I won't say that storytelling is still competitive. We are all friends. It's a small little community and we're all helping each other. So for example, if there is one corporate call that I've got, and that corporate wants a storytelling for adults as an audience, that's not my forte. So I will call up one of the storyteller friends that I know and I'd say, would you like to do this one? So there is no competition as such, if I say, but so therefore I feel that it should be simpler to sort of get together and sort of try and standardize this. We all are somewhere trying. We talk to each other. I literally ask people, how much are you charging for this? So that I don't quote any less or more than what you're charging. Let's try and standardize this, so that people also know ki, acha, if I have a storyteller for 45 minutes, this is how much a storyteller would charge. Okay, 500 rupees, 1000 rupees up and down is okay, but this is what they usually charge. Then with some newspapers, what they've done is they've given a lot of free shows to schools. So now a lot of schools have become very used to having free shows. They don't want to give money for it anymore. Then there was this another very interesting route, little secret that I'm going to tell you. For some, it'll be a secret. For some, you must have already explored it, which is that go through the publishers. So what happens is that the publishers are giving books to different schools, right? If kids is your audience, that is. So if they're giving a lot of books to schools, then they have to give some complimentary workshops to schools. So, but they would pay us for that. So they hire us and they pay us for that. And that also makes you travel pan India, at least sometimes out of India also. So you get free travel, free holidaying and everything, 3 hours of work and then party. So I like that. And I was at the peak of that when COVID happened. So I was like, COVID literally slashed down our prices. They literally slashed down, because now it was like you're not traveling, this and that. It's just an online show. 2000 mein kar do, 2500 mein kar do, which was initially we all got caught in that trap, because honestly we all got little shaken कि अब हम क्या करेंगे? अब live shows नहीं हो रहे, what are we going to do? And we all had bills to pay. So we got into that trap. We got caught, but then slowly I think we're coming out of that trap, and because people have also had enough of online, so now they've also started choosing kahan karna hai. Now Book My Show came in. They have started making the online shows as ticketed shows. Earlier they used to do only live shows as
ticketed. Yes.
So everybody's coming around. Teamwork Arts came up with Kahani Festival online this time. So everybody is now, with the COVID, everyone is sort of figuring out the online world right now. So we are supporting each other. And I'm sure it'll reach a stage where this will also become better, or we'll go back to our physical events. We have already started going back a little bit. So, but having said that, so opportunities are like that, through publishers. Then there are opportunities where you go to schools, talk to principals. They have, a lot of schools have literature festivals now, so they want to invite a lot of good storytellers and artists there. Then corporates have started understanding the impact of storytelling. A lot of workshops have started happening in corporates for the employees, in schools for the teachers and staff. So the workshops have also grown a lot, especially in the online world. Now they don't have to call a person, take care of their the
Stay and
travel,
logistics
stay,
and yeah.
logistics and everything. Online kiya, workshop ho jata hai online, you know. But it all boils down to, are you good enough? It all boils down to, are we working hard on our skills? Are we keeping ourselves updated? Are we with the times? And whatever we are doing, we got to master that. Puppetry सीखा तो उसको master करना है. Don't just do it for the sake of it. You know, whatever we do, we have to master that skill now. Only then there are opportunities in this field. If we do it half-heartedly, or we do something, leave it in between, then we'll
it's
get
not sustained.
lost. Yeah, that we can't sustain this. But that's the only way out. And because there's no standardized procedure to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think skills and being consistent, and also considering that it is our onus to standardize things for our own selves. I think these are the mantras to move forward and to make it
And the
sustainable.
unity. And Shubha, very importantly, the unity.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we need to not do things for free. We put in more effort than that in our rehearsals, in our story. वो तो कोई account में ही नहीं लेता है. The amount of time that we spend in creating one story.
Yeah.
What about that?
That doesn't change whether you're traveling or sitting at home and doing it. It's just the same. So
It's the same. It's the energy that you're putting into it. You're putting your heart and soul into it. You're getting exhausted. I remember Ikiduki when I did for the first time, and there were 3 shows back to back. After that, I needed a stretcher to take me back home. Because it's so physical. That story is so, you're moving from one place to another, running here and there, doing all that. Please see it on YouTube. You'll write Ikiduki, Kamal and Garima, Drama Bars Company. You might get something there. So it's just very exhausting. And I honestly needed a stretcher after that. I was like, wow.
I completely agree with that, because every time I do a story, I feel hungry after the story. It's like मुझे बहुत सारा खाना चाहिए, अभी चाहिए.
Yeah, and if it's interactive storytelling, you're also working a lot psychologically with the audience, and it's a very responsible thing to do. Puppetry is responsible.
I'll just quickly add theatre too. I mean, as theatre people, we budget. Like we start with rehearsal space. We start with, okay, in rehearsal space, if you're going to come for 3 hours, maybe you will have chai. You will need to pay actors. You will need to pay set person. You will need to pay the venue. Right. So from the theatre background, I still do that for storytelling. I'm going to rehearse for what I'm going to perform. Does it even make sense for me to have break even? What are my choices? So we never so far have never done a theatre show which has never done a break even. Like a lot of theatre companies go like put their money and they never recover that money, because then you account for, okay, this is what you're going to spend for. How are you going to recover it? Yeah, so at least think of break even. So and think of every other aspect. If you're going to invite a person, right, you will offer them some food, and please add that, even if it is like 100 rupees, no, add it in your budget. Just make it like this is what you're going to spend. This is what you're hoping to earn. Just sort of go with that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. That's quite a lot of work for, I think, each one of us to do. I mean, there is work for everybody. It's just that how we approach it and how we're going to find it is what it takes.
Yeah. Also, just one little thing to add, which I think he actually mentioned also, is especially in storytelling. I also started with a team of say 10 people when we were together telling a story. Later realized this is not working. This is not selling, if I may use that word. And then we brought it down to 5 people. Even that was very difficult because people would not be able to afford that. The clients wouldn't be, because उनको पता ही नहीं है उसका value अभी क्या है, नहीं समझ आ रहा है. Value भी हमें ही create करना है. We only have to create the value also. We have to create the market also. We have to create
and the product.
And the product also. Everything we have to do ourselves only. So then what worked best for me was either solo performances or dual, 2 people performances. That worked best because that was very easy for people to accommodate, in terms of finances and in terms of logistics. So that is something which I thought I'd share with you guys, that and the less paraphernalia, more imagination,
Yeah,
less
yeah.
less of carrying things
Less
with
of things that
you.
would incur cost.
Exactly. And so that also, कहते हैं ना, necessity is the mother of invention. So वो जो था, I told myself I'm not going to carry 10 bags with puppets. No, I'm not going to do that. So then slowly your mind starts working creatively that, hey, you know what, I could do this only with one mask. Why do I have to carry 10 puppets for this? So you start thinking, okay, this one I could play this role myself. Okay, this one I could play. So like there's this story called Tidalik, the giant frog, which we do.
Yes.
That's what I did at Ganga
Ganga
Utsav
Utsav.
also.
Yes,
So
yes.
I just carried this one puppet. That's it. You know, whereas initially when I used to play this story, it used to have 10 different puppets because there were these 10 different animals coming and asking for things and whatever. And then later I just thought, even if I have to do different puppets, different animals coming in, why don't I just carry one little pouch and I have finger puppets there? And I hold all these finger puppets, one puppet in my finger, especially in an online situation, to or easy ho gaya. And then just they are coming and gossiping amongst themselves, 5 little finger puppets on 5 different fingers, and that's it. Why do I need to carry 5 big animal puppets? So you start making those decisions, with experience also, where you
Right.
say, okay, this is not going to work, this is not going to work, this works well, so let's do this. So you tweak things around. Be open to tweaking it.
Open to tweaking.
Is the idea.
Or rather, we get creative with time.
Exactly. That's the only way to survive,
Right.
especially with such unpredictable times. Yes.
Right. All right. So now we are past 7, and I think I have one more very important question for both of you, and I would just put it out there for you. Both of you kind of not just do storytelling, but also do applied. I mean, you've taken to the applied approach of the storytelling craft and the theater experiences, right? There are other things that you like. Akshay, you do voice coaching, and Garima, you do theater and education. So, what are the other options that a storyteller can try in order to diversify? And, what are those options available out there for the storytellers? Akshay, we can go.
It just goes back to what Garima mentioned, is what is your craft, what you're good at. Once you know that you're good at it or you want to spend your time. I had a really bad, I had no confidence in speaking, though I was an actor in theater, and in theater you need voice. I tried training at many various places. Nothing worked for me because of the kind of background I was coming from. I was never supposed to use my voice. Only after, and that really intrigued me. It really made me research and push myself as much as possible to find voice coaches internationally and really spend my time, energy, effort to find that. And only once I feel comfortable with my craft, obviously it's a lifelong craft. You constantly work on what you do. But once you feel that okay, this is what you're confident with, you think you have grasped on, share it. Find ways to share it. But it all goes back to what Garima said: what you feel your craft is, and then really, I think this what Garima mentioned. I just want to go back to that you find creative ways, right? I think you start to find creative ways only when you are internally comfortable with what you do. Because then you don't need to worry about what I'm doing. You're worrying about how am I doing it now. So then you will find opportunities. Like a lot of social sector is a huge sector. I have not explored. I was just invited a couple of times, and hence I've redesigned my modules. I've redesigned my modules of storytelling, voice, theater to suit their needs, right? And social sector is huge, from NGOs to foundations to children education and all of that. And so once you start redesigning your own modules in a way that people think, oh, that is something for me, then it makes sense. So what is your craft? What are the things which you like about what you do? And then how can you re-articulate them in different contexts? Because people don't know that they need. That's
Yeah. We need to
that's
create
the
that
bigger
need.
problem. I mean, in Europe, that's not the problem, right? Because people know that they need the arts. In India, we are still at a phase where we need to make people understand you need this. This is helpful. right? Which means you need to articulate it in a way, redesign it in a way that at least it looks compelling to a person like, maybe I need to try this. Maybe I need to look at that. Right. And so, yeah, restructure your material all the time. You don't need to be rigid about what you do. Until unless you're not compromising on what you feel is good.
So if I were to actually ask you to, maybe list two or three options for
Yes,
people, so that
social
what?
sector, totally, right? Hospitals, education institutions, NGOs, places like childcare, definitely, right? All of those social sectors. Then you also have corporate sectors, right? Corporate people. There's everywhere there's corporate place. I'm not working with corporates, but a lot of industries, factories invite. Oh, we have employees who don't have voice, and when they face clients, they can't do anything. Sure, we will articulate. So then now I'm teaching in Hindi, which was the biggest experience for me because I learned voice in English, I taught voice in English, and suddenly here I am in a factory setup with machines going on around. But I'm like, okay, if my material is good, it has to work, right? So really look for where people gather. The simple way of thinking about it is what are the places where people gather? Because we are in a field which brings people together, which works only when people come together, right? So the corporates हो गया, industries हो गई, education institutes definitely, and then obviously you have to re-articulate, redesign.
Right.
I'll just add a couple like bookstores. Bookstores is also one place where storytelling, they really welcome storytelling because they want crowds to come to their bookstores to buy books. So a lot of book launches, authors also have contacted me for book launches. So launch their book in a bookstore or a literature festival so that the sales of their books increases because you've done it in an interesting way. So yeah, I mean, that is also one thing that I wanted to add. Rest, I think he's said it all, where all we can go. I am also a drama teacher in a school. So so that is something that has also worked for me. And honestly, अभी भी standardized नहीं है. The schools are not looking for a particular qualification for a drama teacher even now. If you're good at your skill, this is the best time. You could even go to schools because soon it will get standardized. So, so we've been quite lucky that way. If you're good at your craft, they'll take your interview, they'll give you a class as a demo class. If they like your work, they like you as a person, they think you're good at the craft, you could actually enter a school as well. We don't need to be BEds either.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, schools is another option for us as theater teachers. But of course, my personal suggestion would be that, of course, please do a training before you go to a school, because with children, it's a huge responsibility. It's like either you can make them or break them. So it's very important for us to know theater before we start practicing it with them, or any art form for that matter, any subject
Right.
for that matter.
Just want to add, want to add one thing. Sometimes I have earned more through hat collection than ticket sale. But sometimes just put it up. I was traveling with my friend in New York and subway, and he's like, "What is this which you do?" I said, "Okay, let's sit down." So we sat on a subway station, and I performed, and that's it. And we gathered more money than what we could otherwise. In India also I performed enough where we are just passing the hat, right? And sometimes you really collect more than what your ticket sale is. And that also gives you experience in terms of, hey, so it's not for free and you're putting yourself out. You're risking what you know, so which is great.
Right.
And I think that is great at the starting also, like the experimental stages. I think that's great because that also tells you where you are exactly, which is nice. But of course, later we want to sort of formalize it so that people buy tickets in advance so that we know what kind of audience is coming.
What kind of audience? How many audience? I mean, how many of them are actually coming to listen
what
to
are you
us?
really catering to? So it's always nice to have a planned audience. But yeah, I think at an experimental stage, I would really say that's very interesting. It's loads of fun to do that as well. Yes.
That's definitely an interesting option. In fact, we at DST also did consider that option one of the times, but then again, COVID and we really couldn't put that into practice. So,
There's another one. When I started, we used to do a lot of birthday parties. I don't know whether they're looked down upon sometimes also. Then I understood why they're looked down upon, because it's such a celebratory mood there at that time in a birthday party situation. Koi cake kha raha hai, koi snacks chal rahe hain, kahin kuch chal raha hai. So you, as an artist, feel undervalued. So, but then I had some parents of my students who I teach theater. They said that I don't care, you have to do this on my child's birthday because she loves you and you have to come and you have to do this. And so then I thought about it. I was like, if it's love which is what they want to share, am I in a position to say no, really? And then I told her, all right, I'll come, but I have some terms and conditions. I told her the cake cutting ceremony has to happen after the
after the
performance.
story.
Everything has to happen after the story. And I want it in this way. You'll have to put chairs in front of it. So for me, I have to get a feeling that it's a show that
Yeah.
I'm doing. I'm not going for a birthday party. Once the show finishes, the curtain closes, uske baad we'll party. We'll do whatever. But for that, we need that value. I cannot do this if somebody's having cake and somebody's screaming at someone and someone has party poppers in them. I was like, no, that doesn't go with my story. My story is different. A party popper will not go with my story. So, not in this particular story. So the people who were sensitive enough towards the art and the artist and who did go with these terms and conditions, I actually loved it, because for me it was just a show where I'm going to do anywhere else. I choose, of course, I choose this experience. I choose who to do this with and who not to do it for. But over the years, I've learned the art of saying no also, which was very difficult.
Which is also very important.
But it is very important, is what I have realized over the years. But yeah, I've kind of enjoyed those experiences too. So I guess we could choose
Right.
such experiences too.
All right. So thank you so much. It has been such an insightful evening. And there's so much that I've gathered from both of you. And I'm sure our audiences also would have, had identified with at least one or more tips that you all have given today. And there is so much of reflection that can happen after listening to both of you. So thank you so much for taking out time and for being a part of this discussion. And I think now we can open the floor for questions in case our audiences would want to ask any questions to both of you. You all can either write in the chat or you could probably just unmute and ask the question.
Hi, I'm Srilekha Ramchandran. I'm a storyteller myself, and I'm an interested storyteller in a school, private school in Chennai. So I really wanted to ask you this question. You were telling us, no, that how you charge for a show. That is, for your telling how much you charge, you should not undervalue yourself. But in the market, what I see is, say, I'm nowhere in the public forum at all. I'm only involved with the school, and sometimes I do get opportunities, so I go outside. So there, what happens is, how much you set a standard, does it have to be with all those who are at power, who are doing very well in the industry, or we just quote whatever we feel is valuable to us? Is it like that? What would you suggest? See, there is a big circle. You said it's a small world. Actually, when I started getting into all of these Instagram and Facebook, I come to understand it's really huge and huge and huge. I'm trained in Katalaya, but different people quote in different values for their storytelling. So somewhere do we have a standard where we start with, or experience in this?
Actually, it's a difficult question, because this is very for different states also it's different in India. I feel that Delhi has very different rates than Mumbai, and it's very, very different than Kolkata. Again, very different in Bangalore. This is something that I experienced because I had the opportunity of traveling to these different states for storytelling. And then I spoke to friends there, and they said कि हाँ ये यहाँ पे इतना ही है वाला scene है. तो एक तो वो है, state wise it could be different, so that is one. Secondly, your question is that Do you have to be very renowned in this field and then you charge that much? Or if you've just started, then you charge that much? I can't give a number right now because it's state-wise, it's going to be different. But we can, if we feel like that, okay, I cannot charge this much right now because I've just started. If you have that feeling, then go for somewhere in between. I would say that, I mean, don't take yourself as a absolute fresher, because if you've already been working in a school and telling stories for so long, it is professional. You are a professional storyteller already, right? There is no concept of fresher or senior or junior in this particular field. If you're confident about your story, go ahead. There's no stopping. We know that masses go crazy when I tell a story. If we know that it's going to be worth the money after my show, the client is going to feel, yeah, good spent. I've spent good money. I'm very happy. This was worth it. If you're confident about yourself, then just go ahead and ask, is what I would say.
Thank you very much.
There is no
I have a
standard.
very small sort of formula for myself.
Yeah.
What I first of all look for is value. Like I will do it for friends, just like they just call and I don't even ask what are they going to pay, but just for friends or people I know. But otherwise I look for what is the value I'm receiving for, like what I'm doing. Apart from the value, when it comes to financials, I really think about, okay, if I'm going to do this show and if I'm going to sell this ticket, right? Let's say I'm going to charge 150 rupees. And I know that with whatever publicity I will do, I will have say 50 audience. So 50 into 150 that is the number. And then I know that whoever I am performing for, how many audiences are coming, how long the show is, how many people are going to actually listen to the story. And accordingly, I say, hey, this is what I'm going to charge. And with the breakdown, again, this comes from theater, because in theater, you really break down every single bit. When you ask for a theater show, how many seater, how big the auditorium is going to be, right? Because then ultimately, these many people are listening. So if a corporate has 500 people listening, I'm not going to charge 100 rupee ticket, no, I'm going to charge 500 rupee ticket or 300 rupee ticket. And then accordingly quote the price. This is the formula which I have been using. Roughly, it falls in the place.
So Akshay, I would agree with you, that works in theater. So when I also do theater shows, I know my costs that I have spent. I know my expenses. I know how much I need to give to the auditorium for the rent. And then wo sare cost vagera nikal ke, okay, these many tickets for sure are selling. Then I know that, all right, this is how much I need to charge. In a storytelling, it's a little bit different. It's like, if it's a corporate and I know that 500 people are coming to watch, the corporate is asking me for a lump sum amount. So they don't have, most of the corporates don't have that that thing that, you charge per person. They would say that, okay, one storyteller is coming, how much will you charge? Because we are not bringing the paraphernalia with us. It's not an auditorium, or we are not bringing a team with us. We are one or two or maximum 3 or 5 to stretch it. So they'll be like, okay, so what is your lump sum? Tell us. Because they don't see the showbiz or the big, the larger performance. They see storytellers as small performance, one small item out of those 15 things that they're doing. So, so for me, honestly, personally, per person has not worked in storytelling. For me personally, either a revenue share has worked if they are selling tickets, or what has worked is how much would you charge as a lump sum?
I think you've answered, both of you have answered it fairly well. And thank you, Delhi Tribe, for this beautiful and so frankly spoken.
Because
so
that's
really
that's the only way we can standardize it. There is no other way we can standardize.
That's precisely why I asked this question, because you brought in standardization initially when you were having the conversation.
That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's precisely why we ideated this series, so that we could have some candid conversations and people could open up and ask questions and, clear their head with a lot of things that has been bothering them for quite some time with regard to this industry. All right. So in that case, let's let's wrap this up. And it's been wonderful having both of you here. And if any of you have any more questions, I'm sure you can find them on social media and you can drop them a message. I hope so they can. I'm just taking the liberty to go ahead and say that.
Yes,
So
yes,
please feel free to do that. And thank you so much, Garima and Akshay, once again for taking time out and to spend time with us. It's been a wonderful evening and a very enriching evening.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
from
Shubha.
Delhi
Thank you so
Storytellers
much.
Tribe.
Thank you so much, Shubha. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. It was lovely to have you. Sorry, couldn't speak to each one of you because of the time constraints, but please feel free to visit the Facebook page. It's Drama Bars Co. And if you have anything that you'd like to ask me, it's the same email ID also that I'll just put in there, just in case you have any questions that you couldn't ask right now. So you could please email them to me. And it's the same, Drama Bar CEO is the same, Facebook, Insta, everything. So please befriend us so that you could know this, what we're up to. Yeah. Thank you so much, Delhi Storytellers Tribe. It was wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
So thank you, audience.
Take care.
Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.